Hello, welcome everybody.
Hi.
This is the sixth episode of You Are Where You Need to Be. And our topic of today is the cost of suppressing feelings in life and relationships. We wanted to discuss this topic because I think it affects a lot of people and it makes life difficult and even distorted at times if we are not paying attention. So we wanted to raise a bit of awareness about this as well by discussing it. We wanted to start with the basic. What is exactly emotional suppression? It's when someone doesn't spend time actually feeling their emotions and instead they push them away, either consciously or unconsciously. But it's going to result in the same way, basically. If we are not living through our emotions, they are going to come back eventually in more ugly forms. So it's really, really important to recognize them. And even if they are difficult to express or difficult to go through, like painful emotions, for example, I think it's really, really important to just deal with them at the moment when we are feeling them. What do you think in your life, if you are looking at it, which part of your lives did you still suppress your emotions and how did they come out for you on the long run? And when did you start recognizing that you're doing it?
It's an interesting journey because due to a, let's call it situationship, I identified myself as an anxious attacher through online coaches' works and books and based on my own behavior and the symptoms that came across in situations and everyday life, how I got triggered. And the more I learned about this topic, attachment styles and the symptoms, how people react and what kind of attachment styles there are, I started to hear more about fearful-avoidant, and I did not manage to relate to that for a while, just certain particles of it. But still, I'm like, no, it's like, yeah, everything is overlapping. Nothing is black and white. So I'm still probably anxious because look at me. I'm like such full of anxiety. I must be anxious. And then turns out that fearful avoidants become very, very anxious if they have to deal with severe avoidant people. And it started to explain my own behavior. And turns out I really didn't know myself. Like, it's such a mind-blowing thought to me because I thought like I've been living with myself for so many years. And I still didn't know. I didn't recognize a lot of my behaviors. And over the period of past more than a year, like 1 to 2 years, I am identifying myself more like avoidant leaning, fearful avoidant. And I used to be a lot more avoidant and I did not recognize that. And now I see much clearer my first relationships from high school and after like early 20s and early 30s as well. And it was quite an avoidant personality there in many parts of a relationship, not everything, not in the part of where someone fears intimacy. Like I really craved to be with someone, but I just couldn't open up emotionally. I couldn't express my feelings. I couldn't talk about them. I couldn't even tell how I feel really. Even until recent times, I would like ask people like, what is it that when people say they are angry, like I just feel frustrated, you know, what is that word? Anger. And turns out if you don't allow a child to be themselves and enmesh them and gaslight them over time, over years, you punish them for being sad, expressing themselves in any ways that is not like happy and is convenient for the caretakers, then they learn to suppress, they learn to not recognize their own feelings because they never learned how to handle those feelings. Like whenever I tried to bring it up, it was told that it's a burden, so I learned not to bring it up. And then over time, this little child's brain forgets what is that, and you don't even recognize, but your body is talking to you still, and you even manage to push that down, and you explain it some kind of external explanation that maybe it's the blue moon, or maybe I ate something wrong, and those can be also like contributing to your mood, but it's something that you don't learn to listen to your body, to your instincts. And it took me many years. And now over the past months, I can see that, yeah, for many years, for majority of my current life, I just couldn't even express myself for a long time. I couldn't even say sorry to certain people, or that I love them, or even hug them, because it felt so weird. It felt like ripping myself open and all inside out. And it was such a weird feeling. But actually, once you get through this, once you start to face it and do it, even though it feels like someone is ripping your inside out, literally, it just gets easier and easier by the time, and you realize that you bond with people so much better, and you get to know yourself so much better. So avoidant people miss out on life so huge. I can say it so confidently because I'm coming from there. And I wasn't one of the more severe ones.
Yeah, I totally get where you're coming from, because I also thought when I started to discover attachment styles that I was anxious attacher, but it turned out the same way, that I'm fearful avoidant, and just a dismissive avoidant was actually poking the anxious side of me, and that's why I behaved that way. But if I was looking back to my past, there were so many times in relationship where I did not express if I didn't like something. From childhood, I learned that actually my emotions, how I feel and what I feel, doesn't really matter that much, because I had to adjust myself to the adults around me and the mood of the adults. And you're never really discussing how was your day, how did you feel, what are you feeling. We did not talk about feelings at all when it came to us. We were, most of the time, if there was anything, we were talking about our parents' mindset and emotional state, and not really ours. So we learned to be people pleasers that way. And yeah, people pleasers come with completely suppressed emotional palettes. We feel a lot, but we don't really know what to do with it. So we hide it. We start to build negative emotions around it over time if we are not expressing it, or if we express it, it's very childlike. Or that's what I noticed about myself. But I have to say that only in romantic relationships. With friendships, I was always more mature in a way that I could express actually how I was feeling, and I could see it from afar, from a more logical point of view. I don't really know still. I'm discovering what's the reason behind that. But yeah, I started to notice after some time that when I don't like something, now I express it, but before I didn't express it too much, and I just started to build anger and resentment. And when I couldn't take it anymore, I just exploded, and everything just came out unfiltered. And it's not really the best way of conflict resolution. It's not really the best way to express yourself or to communicate, because it will put the other person in the defensive mode directly. And it's hard to get back from there, to face the difficulties and to really have mature communication and to fix things, basically. So I had to go through a lot of relationships to understand that I was not always fair towards the other person, because I did not say what was wrong only when it was too late. And I decided things on my own without involving them. Like if I didn't like something, I just started to tell myself that, okay, I will give it some time and we will see if it improves. But actually, I didn't really discuss with them what should be improving. So, of course, then it's hard and difficult to do anything with it. I decided about major things like moving abroad or major life events without discussing with them first. And of course, it upset them. And when they were upset, I just withdrew even more. And I was angry by them being upset, which was basically a completely normal emotion to feel. So, yeah, looking back, I realized what I did wrong and how much it came from not knowing how to express yourself, your emotions, your feelings, because you didn't even understand why you felt them, because you were never equipped by it in the first place.
Yeah.
So coming from there, it takes a long way to heal that, to research that, and to start to understand why are you feeling and how are you feeling, and feel them, but also rationalize them.
Yeah.
So this is where I came from.
That's very interesting that you say, and I hear that from other avoidants sometimes, that they feel very strongly. And in my case, I don't remember that. I remember like being in a brain fog most of the time. Maybe I was dissociated from life, or I don't know. I still haven't figured fully that part out, and I can't really go back and re-experience the whole thing. In certain situations, yes, but I couldn't feel strongly, because as soon as, if it wasn't a happy feeling, if it was something that I didn't know how to handle, like a disappointment or a conflict, especially conflict, not just feelings wise, but skills wise, because I was also lacking the skills how to handle a conflict, because I was never allowed to express myself, or my caretakers never really taught me how to do it in a healthy way. So my brain would literally shut down. And it still occasionally happens, and it's a very strange process. I remember that with my ex. My ex would try to talk to me. Why am I the way I am? He's so unhappy. Why am I not expressing love or that I care about him? And all I could think about was just leave me alone. I was so fine, like a bottle of pickle. Just don't bother me, leave me there. And when this conversation is gonna end, and then I just got more tired, and in the end I had to go to sleep because I just couldn't handle the whole information and emotional load. And even after that, I just pushed it down. I don't remember how exactly, but never really faced it. I would go play games or do my hobbies or just whatever dream in my head, and watch films. Usually these were my main distractions. And without ever having the chance to know that you can come out of a conflict in one piece, and that can build a relationship. And especially if your partner is also not really mature and aware of healthy tools, how to build a regulated relationship that we are keep healing and not in a codependent way, then it's like you're going to demand from the other person, and then the other person is going to demand from you, and then nothing is moving. And then maybe for like seconds or days, one tries something. But for me, I remember that's why I could relate to my latest situationship, that I could remember how unnatural it felt to me to try to do those things that are considered normal in a relationship, like expressing love, caring about the other person, and not just exist next to the other person like a separate, I don't know, block of brick, and that's it. And it's so weird. And you can do it for a second and 2 seconds. And especially because I mainly experienced him not doing the things that I was asking for as well. it just built more resentment in me as well. So the walls came up even more. It's very difficult. It's really not easy, especially at the first, to recognize, because this is your normal being, the way you function. And someone telling you to do something you never do, and you never even experienced, you never even thought that you should do that. And it's like, why do you ask me to do such things, like talk about feelings? What is that?
Yeah, but this is so important if somebody calls you out on your BS.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, if nobody ever tells you anything, if we all close relationship with really toxic ways like ghosting, leaving it unresolved, or just saying it was not you, it was me, you don't really help that person actually. Why did it happen? You don't really even help yourself. If you don't have these hard conversations, if you don't make time for it to see what went wrong there, then none of you will actually learn from it, and you will just carry it on and on and on to the next person. So it's really, really useful if somebody just faces you and tells you that, you know what, why did you expect me to do this and that for you if you never even told me you want to do this or that? Why didn't you tell me you needed this? And why didn't you tell me that you wanted to do that? And you just tell me now when you are already ending it. It's not fair because I didn't know. And then how could I have changed, or how could we discuss it together to make a compromise about it? So for me, those comments were really crucial. And of course, in the beginning, they were painful and I was angry about it. But then I calmed down, I cooled off, and I started to reflect on them. And I started to think back on my life and how I handled previous relationships and what went wrong there. And many times it was repeating the same pattern. Of course, there were times when I told my partner that, I don't love you anymore. So, okay, let's try to fix it. But just so you know, I don't feel love. So let's see where it goes. I thought back at the day that I was so mature by saying that. And I was also mature by telling him that we can give it another chance to see if it can be fixed. But I didn't put the work in it. And I didn't even tell him before what led me to it. I just said it out loud without him knowing what actually led me there.
Yeah.
And I never wanted to do that again. And then the crazy part about life is when you don't do it anymore and you start expressing yourself, you can still get together with people who don't do it. And then you learn the other side of it.
Yeah.
Like how you were and what it could have caused to the other person if you are withdrawing yourself all the time, you are not communicating how you feel. You just see the mirror like you always do when you choose people around you. They are always mirrors of something, either positive or negative way, but something to learn from for sure.
Yeah.
So it took me a really long time to get there. And in my previous relationship, I still couldn't always express myself in a healthy way. I always said what bothered me, but not always in a constructive way. I was talking more out of frustration after a time.
Yeah.
And that's also not really helpful. But let's get back to what is happening when you are suppressing your emotions, because it doesn't just stay in your head, of course. Emotional suppression will show up in your body too. So if you're living a life in a constant anxiety, in constant resentment, in constantly thinking that nobody's giving you what you want, then at the end it will show itself in different ways. Have you ever felt anything like that?
I mean, I have been struggling with different kind of autoimmune issues in the past, early 20s, literally. And through heavy Googlings and investigations and testings and whatever, I managed to figure out what's causing it, like biologically as well as attachment style and mental health wise. I used to get serious back pain, like I couldn't even bend my back suddenly, usually after big fights with my ex. And I didn't connect the dots at all. And I just generally had constant back pain, lower back pain for many, many years. And that was the normal. To that also it contributed that I never worked out. So clearly, if you're sitting all day long or standing all day long, that's not really gonna help the situation. But I have noticed that even once I started to work out and I got into a more stressful relationship or life situation, it would come back and it just can't really fully leave, because that one I still haven't sorted out fully. And then I had issues with my hair falling out, literally acne on my face and other problems. It's just there, it comes out. And once I started to really find peace, I don't really experience any of those. Also, getting flu all the time. Like once you are under a lot of stress, and they say, that when you are overdoing things, you don't get sick. But I think there is a stage as well when you are just constantly sick, because you are always weighing down by stress and your body just cannot function and regulate properly. So that's my experience.
Yeah, it's really, really interesting what you said, and what came to my mind about this. These all come out eventually because you don't rest yourself. Like you're in a constant stress, in constant anxiety, and constantly feeling that what you have is not enough. Constantly looking for something, overworking yourself or over distracting yourself, and you never sit with yourself. And as we discussed in the previous episode, it's really important to just sit with yourself and to relax. Basically, because if you don't give that to yourself, it all comes back to these issues. And the other problem, what people who suppress emotions struggle with, is setting boundaries.
Oh, yeah.
That's,
I mean, how could you?
How could you if you cannot even communicate what you want? Of course, everybody will walk over you.
Yeah, and if you don't even know what is going on inside of you, like how I didn't know, and how I'm sure those people who I used to be in contact with, they don't know, because every single time I would ask, the answer would be, I don't know. And it's like, if as a child you're not allowed to recognize how your body functions, how your mental health functions, how to sort things out, how to resolve conflict, how to sit in the uncomfortable, how to self-regulate yourself. Like, there's so much thing that a child should need to learn, and their needs be respected and known, both by them and their parents and everyone around them. And if you just don't learn that, it's like ABC. That's an easy one, because that you can see, that you can relearn. But feelings and needs is just something uncomfortable that you were always living like that. It's been always like that. I'm just like that. That's so easy to categorize life like that, in a victim mode, especially if everyone around you is doing this victim mentality. So you can just easily explain, yeah, that's just me. I guess I will just never sleep ever. I will always be tired, because a lot of avoidance, I do believe, I haven't read anything official about this, but based on my life experience, a lot of avoidance have severe insomnia, because they are just, in my theory, don't resolve serious traumas in their lives, and they just keep procrastinating on sleep, and it just gets worse. And I have fallen into this pit as well myself in my latest experience, and I keep still doing it, unfortunately not in a severe way, but it's still affecting my everyday life. And obviously, if you don't sleep enough, if your sleep hygiene is not good quality, then during the day, you are not functioning. You are literally surviving. And then in survival mode, you cannot grow. You cannot reflect. Especially you cannot reflect if you have never done it. If you don't recognize your own needs, your own feelings, why the way you are functioning, and you don't have the idea that you could change that. And it's just not helping people at all to grow and heal. It's not getting any further.
Yes, and don't you think it's so strange that still today society is connecting being a good person as being helpful and being always at service and to being there for everybody, and the selfish person, bad person, who is actually withdrawing, setting boundaries, and just taking care of themselves and learn to say no to things.
Yeah.
It just popped up in my mind. Like, it's still there. We are still there as a society, that people pleasers are shown as the good example because they can be walked over, they can be exploited.
Yeah.
So of course that's what society needs, right?
Yeah.
A bunch of people who don't set boundaries.
Yeah. So little robots and slaves, that you can control. And I do remember those many years when I would be so happy to be helpful and so happy to work more, and let me just help you with that, and let me just do this for you, and so on. And eventually I just realized that I don't have a life. I did realize, but a lot of avoidants, unfortunately, don't realize it until they collapse into it, or worst case, they get such a really bad disease and they die in it or something. Like, I know people who got almost nervous breakdown because they were never able to set boundaries. And for me, this came across differently. It happened in my relationships mainly and in my family. And if you don't know how to do it, how do you do it? You can't do it. Like, I was so sure in one of my friendship relationships that I was communicating that I have issues with something. But then at the same time, I was such a people pleaser that I was convinced that I'm the problem here. I have to mold myself to be okay with this kind of treatment or happenings and so on.
That's right, directly there.
And I would maybe quietly mention, and in my head, I would be like, if I mention this once to a person and they don't get it, then I have to work on it. Because then they are this way and I have to accept them the way they are. But how do I do that? This feels so uncomfortable, and it started to get out more and more. And I would actually recognize that I'm being gaslit and I'm being manipulated. And it's not like, turns out that I didn't communicate my needs either properly to healthy standards because I just didn't know. And prior to that, I didn't have to because I didn't really even have friends. So how the hell do you practice? Because you are good on your own. A lot of avoidant people, they have these surface level relationships, but others are just like literally alone, or they have one friend they meet once in a year and then they catch up in a surface level way or something like that. But yeah, so learning these kind of skills is another set of tasks, and it's really hard and it's very scary. And every single time have this fear inside, like, what they gonna say? How they gonna react? Oh my God, I'm gonna lose them, or what if? And because you were never taught that it should be okay to communicate how you feel. And I would rather reduce myself and disappear and then quickly slip out the door when the person were like really not seeing that I need something that I clearly didn't really communicate either. Then, face them and say, hey, I really appreciate this connection we have right now. And for a while now, I have some issue that I would like to bring up and work on together, and I would really appreciate if you were part of it because I value this relationship. And then you still need to see how they react, because some people would immediately, what are you talking about? And then just deflect and gaslight you. Those, to me, now I'm like, immediate answer. I know that's you cannot work with that. There is nothing phrasing it nicer, because I used to try that. Or if I just explain it better or something. So I wanted to get back to a comment of yours that if they don't communicate, yes, but also we have to recognize that the same way I wasn't hearing what my ex was asking me, in a way, I did hear physically with my ears, but my brain, my body did not understand. I haven't gone through that kind of healing and understanding and self-reflection yet to really see what is it that he was seeking. Plus, very often avoidance end up in a toxic situationship because the same way we don't know how to set boundaries, the same way we don't know who we are, the same way we don't know what kind of partner we should seek. So we just literally get together accidentally with the first person who looks nicely at us or pays us attention. And then we try to change them. And then maybe we communicate, because I also tried to communicate in some cases, but maybe not everything. And then the resentment starts to build because it clearly isn't what you want. And then even if you communicate, it may not be delivered, because the recipient is not your actual compatible person.
Yeah. All you can do basically is recognize your own patterns and try to build a healthy communication style. But of course, it doesn't mean that it's going to be received well all of the time. So you just have to find the people who are actually okay with your self, who is setting boundaries, who is not always there to serve. And this is actually coming back to the people pleasing part, because even today, when I set boundaries and I learn to say no, when I'm saying that no, the old me is still inside and is still there like, oh, but you are so mean. And then I'm telling myself, no, you're not mean. This is how it should be. This is a healthy boundary. This is not being selfish. This is just taking care of yourself. This is just communicating what you don't want or you want. And that's completely fine. That's how it should have been always, if you were ever thought how to do that. So I try to calm down and just shut off that sound in me, but it's still there, and maybe it's always going to be there. I don't know if I will ever reach that point when it disappears completely, because I've been conditioned for that for so long, basically almost all my life. So it's really, really hard to completely dismiss it like it never was there. But it's so important to do, because what kind of relationships, it's not just romantic, any kind, can you build as a people pleaser? If you are lucky, maybe you will meet one or two kind souls who are not there to basically use you or have you as a function, but will truly be your friends, because it also happens. But most of the relationships you build will be around your people pleasing. So at the end, when you start to change that, all those connections will disappear.
I do believe, and based on my own experience as well, and I heard this from, I'm really bad at remembering coaches' names, but I will look it up and then maybe we will put it in the post eventually. And she was saying this in a podcast where she would mention that you meet people at the level of your psychological wound. So I do believe that as long as we don't heal majority of our wounds, and it doesn't have to be perfectly healed, but that it's not allowing us to find a healthy connection, we are not going to find a savior. We will find someone at our level, at some deeper wound that we haven't healed. And that's what I recognized with my latest encounter as well, because I was like, when I started to recognize who he really is, and I'm like, how did I allow that to happen? And then I realized that I don't have to be fully at that level, at that stage, or at that shade of color. But if a certain part of the graphic has that, wound, there we will attach, we will find each other, because that's where we connect. And I would notice this with friends as well. And then later, the more I would get to know them, I'm like, okay, you are not really the way I thought you are. Yes, expectations is the wrong thing, but it's very hard to let go. But then, yes, it's certain wounds. And then the more wounds you have, the more like little toxic arms you will reach out to other people and connect with them for shorter or longer period of time until you heal them and you just know and consciously start to look for people and know what standards you should be looking for. And if someone is not standing up for those standards and not respectful towards you and so on, then you are able to let them go, because that wound is not hanging on to them with all their fingers.
Yeah, and you are not gaslighting yourself to overlook the bad qualities, what actually is more present in their personalities, and you are just putting on a pedestal the good ones, because everybody has good and bad ones, just the balance matters, especially for you as a person and your value system. So if you're constantly overlooking things which are not measuring up with your own self-worth and your values, then it's going to be a really bad street to go to, or I don't know how to express it. But if you're gaslighting yourself, then you're also not knowing how to ask for what you need from those relationships. Of course, they will ask you for things, and your act of service, your people-pleasing side will always be there to just catch on that and to just do what is expected from you. But you don't even dare to communicate your feelings, basically, and your needs, because you think that you are going to lose them. And you start to build the resentment anyway. You start to get the anxiety anyway. You cannot really get away with that. It's going to be there. And you can live a life like that, okay? Many people do. They remain in that circle and they never find a way out because they don't have the strength or they don't have the tools to know how to get away from that. But then, you live a very unhappy life, and you will always look at other people, even if you never say it, because people pleasers never really say it out loud, only to themselves, that they blame the other person. And okay, of course, you can blame everybody, you can blame someone, but you chose that and you allowed that. And this is not blaming the victim. It's saying that you shouldn't look at yourself as a victim. You should look at yourself as somebody who can change and who can develop tools which will allow them to choose better connections with people in the future, and to have the strength to let go of these toxic ones, because that's also something which is really hard, because of course you developed emotions for them, you love them, you like them, then it's hard to let go. But if they don't serve the purpose of what you find eligible in your life, then why are they there? What do they represent?
The thing about people pleasing is it works differently in different relationships, and it comes from different source as well, but usually it's paired with a strong lack of sense of self, as well as lack of self-love and self-respect and self-worth. And especially with severe avoidance, and in my case as well, I didn't realize. I kind of knew majority of my life that I lack a lot of self-respect, but I didn't really see that. And self-love, and self-confidence. That was the main thing, confidence, self-confidence, that I know my entire life that I don't have, because I always felt shy and didn't want to speak up with strangers and so on. But the thing is, with a lot of avoidance, they try to be people pleasers and keep practicing that because they don't think that they deserve you. And they would never ever say this out loud. And because of that, they will keep putting like a helpful picture up, that they will try so hard to get the validation and to show that they are worthy. And it's somehow they will still give up eventually, because they just deep inside, they don't feel that they deserve you, that they deserve any kind of love. And they will sabotage this with withdrawing and lack of communication, because they just don't know how to do it. And it's such a strange thing, because you would think that people pleasing is a kind thing, but it's not really. It just comes from such an insecure place.
You know what's healthy? Being a good person.
Yeah.
Being a good person doesn't mean you are a people pleaser. People pleasing, I already see now as a negative trait.
Yeah.
Because you just betray yourself over and over again.
Yeah.
For other people's needs. And we also like to say that, yeah, I just don't like conflict. Actually, that's my personality, which is not the case. I mean, what kind of conflict? Difficult conversations?
Or just saying no?
Yeah, saying no, facing issues. It's actually about fear of being emotionally exposed and not about liking or not liking conflict. That's all it's about.
Yeah, but they are so not aware that they can't even see that. So it's easy to say that, oh, this feels weird, I don't like it. That's it. And they don't see the deeper levels where they don't realize what it would take for them to show up in such a vulnerable way and form. That's what's uncomfortable, because they don't know actually how to do it, because they'd never really done it before. So it's more like unable to do it, and then they just see that they can't. The lack of level of seeing of the layers. That's what's blocking their vision over the possibility that they could change actually.
Yeah, and the thing is with that, if you don't find what you are doing wrong, you will always blame the other person, and you will end up with I don't know how many unsuccessful relationships where you are looking back and, yeah, they had this problem, they had that problem, that was there, that was... Okay, what was with you?
Yeah.
What did you do? What led to that? Because a relationship is about two people. It's not just... Okay, there are cases when there are people who are abusive, who really are malicious, and they want to control somebody else. But even from those situations, if you have this awareness, if you have self-love, you can avoid it before it goes. Because I heard many times, and I of course understand, I had this situation too, that the guy was so nice and it was like a dream coming true and da da da. And so I couldn't have known. Yes, you could have known from there, exactly from there, because a healthy, normal relationship doesn't start with love bombing. It's not going to look like it's coming from a fairy tale.
Yeah.
And again, because it can sound like victim blaming, I don't want to blame anybody. I know how hard it is, how almost impossible it is to get out of those situations. But that's why we need these tools beforehand, so we don't get into them, or we don't deep dive into them. We don't continue, and we don't excuse behavior just because they show something else in the beginning. Because I did that too. That's why I'm saying I did that too. I was looking for that person over and over again. That person didn't even exist. That's what I have to say about that. If you want a real connection, if you want it to happen, then you have to share your feelings. You have to have a set of boundaries, of actually standards even, which you say and communicate to the other person in the beginning. this is how I am, this is how I work, this is what I like, how about you? You have to have these discussions early on. And then from there, you can start developing something. But for avoidant people or emotionally suppressed people, even just feeling happy can be enough to start something. Like, oh, they make me feel special, or I feel special, or I started to develop feelings, and they don't really look at the bigger picture or compatibility.
Yeah. I think that is an overall giant problem in society, the lack of knowledge of how a healthy relation should look like. Because we are still coming from generations that were kind of forced to get married because society expected them, because they had to survive at certain level. They had no knowledge whatsoever how it should be. And then they were like, oh, well, I can't really get divorced because I don't know where to live, or I don't have possession without this person, or I don't know where to put my children, or like literally basically surviving. And in survival mode, you don't really start to see that, oh, maybe I should set better boundaries. You are stuck with in a life situation, literally, and then you just can't even raise healthy next generation like that.
Of
How
course not,
could
because
you?
what you're going to give them, what you're going to show
Yeah.
them. If you are being in a survival mode since you are a child and you never faced it, then what can you pass on to your children? The exact
Yeah.
same thing, no?
Yeah. So literally that lack of information and knowledge that people don't know that we don't have to get married before 30. We don't have to have kids. We don't have to, like, especially women are so not allowed still to be themselves. We still have to, like, show kind of standard that is expected, that you are a mother, you have to be a mother, you have to be a good wife, and so on. And a lot of girls are still feeling the pressure of that, and they don't allow themselves to be fully the person they want to be, or they don't even know who that person is. And they either just drift through years single or from relationship to relationship being another avoidant and or get together with another person and then they make children and then they just create other dysfunctioning families. And this should be a universal knowledge that we have to spread, literally, is what kind of standards you need to know, and you have to be okay with yourself the very first place. Know yourself, know your standards, how to communicate, how to resolve any like human skills that they never teach us in schools or anywhere. And then you could go out, but then the thing is, a lot of people have the wound of fear of being alone, being abandoned because of their childhood traumas, and then they just let go of all kinds of works because they want to be with someone. They don't want to be alone, and they don't want to admit that they are actually not happy. So, and I have been there too. I'm guilty of that too. But with narcissistic people, to go back to that, it's again, I don't think that there is such thing that you are completely secure and healthy and you don't have any wounds, and the narcissist comes along and they will drag you down with you. There must be something there that they are able to grab, which is what you mentioned, that, oh, they are so nice. So there was something lacking there from the sense of self and confidence and the picture of me or someone else that they could grab and they could use to manipulate you, to lure you in. Yes. So it never happens accidentally. And if we would have all these knowledges and we would like first heal and learn and be aware that, yes, we can go into relationships, but we don't have to get stuck into it. And we have to first vet into the people we meet. Just because we feel good about them at first, or they make butterflies in our stomachs, which now I know is apparently anxiety because they trigger our deepest wounds. it's not
Yeah.
love, then
These
yeah, you
these are
say.
all long-term effects of the exact same thing, that we don't learn anything of our emotions, and we don't learn what
Yeah.
we want, who we are as individuals. So this can lead to serious long-term effects like attachment disorders, narcissism, or codependency,
Yeah.
like so many people have. And the children, they learn how to feel and regulate their emotions through their caregivers, right?
Mhm.
So if they don't see the healthy expressions, they either shut down emotionally or become hyperreactive. And these are all coming from there.
Yeah.
And our whole life and how we choose to partner up with, how we choose to be friends with, how we actually choose to function in society with people, it's all going to have an impact on our life. And it
Yeah.
can be a positive or a lifelong negative impact, where we always feel the dissatisfaction, but we never know where it comes from.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the weirdest thing I remember. That is just something wrong, but I don't know what. And I would hear this from avoidant exes as well, and they just couldn't answer, or that overwhelmed them. Like, what does that mean? That doesn't help me. But it's how early this starts and why it's so important to learn how to even be there for your child, because it's a very demanding job to raise a new human being. And
For sure.
people who just do it because they are lacking of love and they want to be loved and they want a baby and they want their best friend or whatever, they are not doing it for this new human being. They do it for themselves, which is a very selfish place. And then they get overwhelmed. They don't know also like life skills, how to handle a tantrum, how to do, like, even that takes so much energy. Like, just to manage yourself takes a lot of
Yeah.
energy. And then having to deal with a child who is nonstop there demanding your attention and energy. And then, oh, I'm still out of work, I can't find job. Why don't we have another kid? Because since I'm at home, why not? But then the person doesn't even have the energy for the first child at the first place. And it's like, there should be rules on how to have kids, if you have any at all. But really, I have seen, sorry, yes?
No, just finish your sentence.
No, I just wanted to share this video that I've seen on Instagram, where in Asia, I think, they were interviewing this 3-year-old little boy who they asked if you want to go home after some kind of activity. Like, I didn't see the whole program. It was like a certain cutout of it. And then he answered, the 3-year-old boy, no, I'm good here. Something like this. I can't recall word by word what it was, but the point was that he did not wish to go home, which is what a child doesn't want to go home to their parents. And the point was, the flip was in it, that the parents were actually watching their child and the interviewer through a camera and witnessing that this child actually felt so lonely because there was a newborn baby. And then they would ask if he loves his dad or something like that. And then it's like, oh, well, he's always so scary, like, because he's always angry. And children are so hypersensitive to their parents, like, it's their life is dependent on those two people. And then the mom is like, I don't think my mom loves me, because she never pays attention to me. Not exactly these words, but that's the point of it. And they were crying, and I'm like, good, you have to see this. Like, I hope you are changing entirely your life around, because if they don't reveal this, that little child becomes, worst case, a very severe avoidant that is gonna dysfunction their entire life through probably being a workaholic or a very low functioning avoidant who don't know what to do with their lives and nothing ever works and they just don't know what is wrong and they just think they are the wrong because they never got love properly. So children internalize this whole treatment and they don't understand that And not just children, I have to say, because it was a very new thing for me as well to finally understand that whatever people do has nothing to do with you. It has everything got to do with them, how they feel, what is in their mind, what their goals are, what their needs are. And a child is not at the place to understand that, especially if their parents are also emotionally unavailable and immature. They only see, I don't get attention, I must be faulty, you know. And they grow up like this with the feel of shame and being broken. So how could they, you know, live life happily and create healthy relationships like that?
Yeah, that's the tricky part, basically. If suppressing your emotions has been your normal since your childhood, then it's hard to even recognize it, that you have this problem. And if you don't recognize it, what are you going to do? You just live your life through your distractions, whatever it is. Some people overwork themselves. Some people jump from relationship or affairs to affairs. Some people get to addictions. Any kind of addiction, can be gaming nonstop, can be watching TV, can be anything, really.
Yeah.
And they call that hobbies, and they don't even understand that it's that amount of time they spend with it, or actually how they are turning to it. It's unhealthy, and it is telling something about themselves, how they are coping. And they don't look why they are doing that. They feel something, what is negative, and they directly want it to go away with distractions. So many people do that.
Yeah. And they also, because they were never really allowed to develop a healthy sense of self, they start to develop some kind of sense of self through, for example, work. And every of their achievements at work becomes their personality, or through their hobbies. And they just say they love it so much, even though they're stressed so out of their minds, they don't have energy to maintain their own healthy life at all. They can't nourish themselves because they rather die during working or they're doing their hobbies, or just sleep through their life, or whatever their way of coping, than see that that's actually a coping mechanism that of course feels good, because nothing ever felt good other than that, because they had no control over. They had no control whether that person will love them or treat them right. And because they can't set boundaries, they also feel they don't have control in life. So what do they have control over? Their hobbies, how they live relationships, how they overwork themselves, how they work out. Turns out a lot of weightlifters and bodybuilders are avoidant, which is
how
that explains it. So, yeah.
We are not going to be popular with this.
That's good. This show should give us the conversations in the chat.
Yeah, we want to bring up hard conversations, so it's fine.
Yeah. So yeah, it's literally so hard to develop, to first of all wake up to your own behavior that was your normal, how you also said it, at the first place. And I know a lot of people who would be quite aware. And I also had stages in my life when I could identify that, oh, I did that again. But I could not stop it. I didn't know, because I didn't have the tools. But luckily, recently, I came across this personal development school and other coaches, and then they give you step-by-step guides, and then reading books about these things can help so much. Coaches following coaches and listening to podcasts like this to feel related and start to question your own behavior, your own actions, and so on. And it takes time. It's really not easy to change.
Yeah,
that's why we can't change other people, because if it's so hard for us, we can't expect
what we
them.
can always suggest is, when you feel an emotion, just sit with it. Cry if you need to, write about it if you want to, but sit with it and start to understand where it is exactly coming from and what it is trying to tell you and why you are feeling it. Because sometimes it's not even related to what you first think it is. Maybe it's something from your past. Maybe it's a trigger which you are carrying around for a lifetime and it gets to the surface in certain situations, but you never dealt with it. So it will come back over and over again and you will identify it wrong. So really, just what you can do is try to feel them because it softens them actually. If you give space to your emotions, they will get better over time. They really do. There is no timeline of how long it takes, but it will because you will rationalize them and understand them after you already felt them.
Yeah, I do appreciate and love this advice, but I would like to advise from my own experience because I hear this from every coaches, and when I wasn't able to understand my own feelings and body and where I was, this didn't help me, to be fair. This can, like, if you are struggling to even tell what is going on, you don't even know how to sit in your emotions and feelings because you are just, something is wrong and you are being pushed by this power, this force to do something to fix this. So I would like to advise it from my own avoidant perspective because when I was in those stages, not being able to recognize my feelings yet, I just felt this strong power controlling my body, literally, and I had to act up on it to fix it, to do something about it. And then I would be nonstop searching Facebook or YouTube or Google or whatever. But what it means, which obviously I had to go through a lot of pain and experience to finally understand, sitting in your feelings is that you literally don't do anything. You maybe even shut down, you turn away from computer, you shut down anything.
Yeah.
And I noticed that sometimes that I feel like lately, what something is wrong. And some emotion, I can't even tell yet what it is, but there is something and I have to put aside everything else. And it might be difficult in certain situations, but if you can, just put your phone down, turn away from the computer, or go to different place in your house or room and just breathe. And if usually for me, it's an immediate crying. As soon as I put away everything, I start to cry because my body is so happy that I'm finally paying attention to it, whatever it is. And I'm still struggling to fully understand. Usually it's like I'm being sad for something because I'm missing something. And it's usually not a person, it's a need that I'm missing. So emotions as well are showing that we are missing something from our everyday life, which we are not meeting every day. And then it just triggers one of our wounds. And it's really hard to do on the spot very often. And usually for me, it builds up still. It still builds up. It doesn't happen at the moment. And after, once I'm out of the situation, I'm able to process my feelings. It's not happening on that spot because my brain is still so conditioned into either people pleasing, but now I recognize it so much better and I stop it on that one. I managed to stop because that's not a feeling, that's a thought, that's an action, and I can stop it. But maybe I don't give the right answer. I don't feel treated well. And then later I have to sit down and process the whole thing. Maybe I talk with my friend through it. And then after I feel it, or first feel it and then talk it out. And it always comes later, not immediately. So if that happens, try and recognize that there is something wrong, and maybe you even keep thinking about a certain situation and you might not be able to concretely grab what was wrong there. But then eventually you will find it and you can narrow it down and it feels so much better, guys.
Yeah, just sit with the discomfort. Let your emotions be messy of however they want to be.
Yeah.
Because if you don't do that, eventually it will get worse. So
Yeah.
buried emotions don't stay buried, okay?
Yeah.
They find a way to the surface through our health, our relationships, our daily patterns. If you want to improve on that, then you just have to sit with them.
Yeah. And I would like to just still add one more thing is that usually resentment builds up because of unprocessed emotions and because of unprocessed experiences that you were not happy about, and you actually did not stand up for yourself. You did not protect your inner child, and you are actually not feeling the resentment towards the other person. You are feeling the resentment towards yourself because you let yourself down repeatedly. So if you keep, like, that's what happened in my previous relationships, that I would bring up maybe one issue and then I would collect the other ones. And then it just, because I didn't feel good about the situation, and I never actually stood up for myself to be my authentic self, I let myself down. So obviously eventually that will feel like you will feel anger towards the other person, but it's actually you that, like, that person did nothing literally for you about
Exactly.
that.
Don't lose good connections because you don't know how to process your emotions.
Yeah, and you
So
can do
would you
it
like,
together as well.
yeah, of course, if both people are up to it, then it's much more easier than you think, actually. And it's the best way to
Co-regulation.
do.
Yeah. I think
So
that's
is
it.
there anything else you would like to
No.
add, or? Okay, so let's wrap it up. I hope that it was an interesting episode for me. For sure it was. It was a really great conversation. So thank you so much, as always.
Same, likewise.
And thank you guys for watching. If you like our content, please subscribe and tell us about your thoughts in the comment sections.
And your experiences, where you are at
Exactly.
feeling
We
your
would really like
feelings.
to hear, your experiences too. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank
Bye.
you. Bye. Bye.